You're listening to the Confidence Coach Podcast, episode 53, How to Tell Your Story, and sharing a little bit about mine. Hey ladies, welcome back to the podcast. We are officially starting season 2, 2019. And as you can see, there's been a few changes to the podcast. We are now called the Confidence Coach Podcast. And the reason behind this is I always talk about confidence. It is like the absolute number one thing that I get asked about. I always talking about courage, confidence, overcoming fear, putting aside old stories, and really becoming the person you were meant to be without worrying about fear or judgment or what society says or what history has told you to do. I get asked all the time about confidence in your personal life, how to have uncomfortable conversations, or confidence in your business life, how to put yourself out there, how to tell your story, how to find your brand, how to get others to want to invest in you. And really it comes back to your inner confidence, right? Your self-confidence. What do you feel like you are worth as a human? How do you stand in your truth and know that everything is okay? Like you are worth it and that you are enough. And so that's what I'm here to share on this podcast this year. I'm going to give you, tangible steps, tips, tricks, tools to help you grow in your personal life, in your career, your business, whatever it is that you're working on. I'm going to bring you everything that I've done. And then I'm also going to be bringing you interviews this year too, which I know I did last year, but I'm going to really get intentional about these podcasts and these interviews and things like that. So let's dive on into today's episode where I'm going to talk about sharing your story. Sharing my story, I guess you could say. I did a poll on Instagram the other day because I have a ton of new followers and they're like, well, how did you get to where you are? Like, what do you do? What's your story? Blah, 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 blah. And I know that it's been a while since I've shared my story. So I asked my audience what questions they wanted to ask me. And I have about 7 questions that I'm going to answer that will hopefully help you tell your story or relate to me in some way, kind of where I've been and where I plan to go. So by no means am I done. This is a journey. There is not like an end destination. So yeah, bear with me. Or join me for the ride. Okay, so my first question that I got on Instagram, and if you guys aren't following me on Instagram, pause this right now and go follow me at Sausha, SAUSHAL Davis on Instagram, okay? So the first question, what was the last straw or the turning point that inspired your growth journey? Okay, so these are kind of 2 questions to me. So there was a turning point that inspired my growth journey, and then there was a last straw. So I'm going to say the turning point that inspired my growth journey is when I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. So this has been 2.5, 3 years ago, I want to say. And that was really like the, okay, Sausha, you really need to get your shit together moment. Like I had told you guys before, I have been on this personal and professional development journey, however you want to say it. Like I feel like I say journey all the time. I've been doing personal and professional development since last 10 or 12 years or so. And I was always taking baby steps. I never really had anybody to hold me accountable. I never really started investing in myself until I found out I was pregnant. And I realized that I had a ton of shit from my past come up, especially in terms of like parenting and wanting to live a life I loved. I felt like I was just checking the boxes. I felt like I was on freaking autopilot. And really, I didn't want to be a shitty mom. I know that sounds terrible, and not that like my parents were super shitty, but I viewed them as the anti-heroes. Like I said, they did the best they could with what they had, but growing up, I would always say to myself, not this. I'm never going to have kids because I don't want them to experience these things, these hardships, divorce, hating their school, hating their life, being, I wasn't ever really bullied. I guess you could say that I was the bully's bully. But really just all of the BS that I had to go through as a young kid. And so I had swore to myself that I wasn't going to have kids. And then, well, now I'm pregnant. Now I'm having a kid. And you can't teach your child something that you have not been through yourself, right? Otherwise, it's just the blind leading the blind. Or my biggest pet peeve is do as I say, not as I do. Like, I heard that all the time when I was growing up. And every time I hear that, I just want to punch somebody in the face. It's like, shut up. Oh, I cannot hear that. That gets me fired up. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to teach my daughter all of these things, I need to figure out my own shit so that I can help her live a better life, show her a better life, have and do a better life for her. So that's when I really dove into personal development. That's when I up-leveled my whole life. I invested in a coach and a coaching program and just really went all out. I'm like, I'm all in. This baby's going to be here in less than a year, and I really want to get on the fast track to living my best life, right? I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to be on autopilot. I don't want to be angry. And I was angry. I was so angry. I hated my job. I hated like commuting, like anything and everything. I would just always, overall, I would say I'm a pretty positive person, but like I would go into these negative spirals pretty quickly. Like if something wasn't going my way, I would spiral and say, this sucks. I hate this, why does it have to be this way? And we're always going to be broke. We're always going to be punching time clocks. We're always going to be living life on somebody else's watch. And that just did not sit well with me at all. So I'm like, hey, something's got to give. Something's got to change. So I would say that is the biggest turning point that inspired my growth journey, was finding out that I was pregnant. And then again, when I had her, I was like, oh, hell, everything's really changing now. And it's funny because a lot of people say like your life ends when you have children, but my life began that day that, oh, this is going to bring tears to my eye. Whew. Okay. That day that she was born was the day that I was like, opportunity is everywhere. Like I am going to make the best of this life. Like you only get one. And mine began May 10th, 2017. And, yeah, I'm never looking back. Whew. So that was probably the biggest turning point. And the last straw was when I went back to my corporate job right after my daughter was born. I shouldn't say right after, it was a few months after. And not that I love helping people. I love problem solving. I love coaching people, things like that. But I did not feel valued at my job. I was so sick and tired of, wake up, go to work, come home, feed the baby, go to bed, do it all again the next day. Like I lived life on autopilot and I was done with it. I was so done with living life on somebody else's terms. I was working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Like the computer was always on, the phone never stopped ringing. And I was always constantly putting out fires. And I was like, this is no way to live. This is no way to live. I am so done with this. I know I'm made for more. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. I've kind of dabbled in a few different endeavors and I'm like, okay, I got to do something. Like this is the absolute last straw. And the last straw was basically, they said that I could, ease back into the workday after I had my daughter, 6-8 hour days, whatever, and then work from home a little bit. And that lasted for a few days. And then I was right back into the hustle and bustle of the 10, 12 hour days, and I have a teeny tiny baby at home and I didn't see her. Like when I went back to work and I only went back for like a month, you guys, and I was like, this is it. I'm done. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Enough is enough. I'm done. And I didn't see her seriously for like a month. Like that whole month that I was back at work, I saw her for maybe a couple hours a day and she was typically sleeping, which is fine. But like I was attached to a breast pump. Like I was literally pumping 5-6 times a day because that's how long I was away from her. And it was just awful. And I'm like, I did not have children so that she could just spend all day at daycare with somebody else. I did not do this. This is not okay. This is not how society is supposed to be. This is not how I'm supposed to live my life. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I put my foot down and I told my husband that night, I'm like, I'm quitting my job. I said, I don't know what it looks like yet, but I'm going to make it work because I am determined. I have grit, and I am never working a freaking quote 9 to 5, which is actually like a 5 to 9, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. There is no such thing as a freaking 9 to 5, not in the corporate manufacturing, production, whatever world. It's like your brain never shuts off. And not that being an entrepreneur is any different. You know, I have like five or six jobs right now, but I work when I want to work, not when somebody else wants to work. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But yes, I was just done with it. And it was scary. It was super scary. I remember handing in my notice and I was like sweating profusely. I was shaking. I seriously thought I was going to shit my pants. Like, I was just like, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. There is no turning back. And the sales manager kind of helped me at the time because he's like, are you going to quit? Because I think he knew what was going to happen. And I was like, yes, I am. So that kind of helped me out a little bit. But that was the last straw. And I just, from that day on, I vowed to myself that I'm not going to live that life. I'm not going to be about that life, and I'm not going to show my daughter that life, because for a long, long, long time, I was living based on everybody else's goals and dreams, not necessarily what I wanted, right? Every time something came up, they were like, hey, Sausha, you should take this job. You would be perfect for it. Or Sausha, you should do this. You would be perfect for it. Or Sausha, this is what so-and-so thinks you should do. Or this is what your parents think you should do. Or this is what blah, 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 blah. Not ever, what does Sausha want to do with her life? And while yes, I went on adventures and did lots of like crazy, fun, stupid shit, that was always like here and there. Like, it wasn't like a daily thing. Like, I didn't like get a plan out my day. I didn't have a schedule. I was literally living on somebody else's time, and I was not okay with it. So that was my last straw. What am I most proud of is the next question. And I would say that so there's two things that I'm most proud of. One, that I even decided to have the conversation with my husband about having children, because you guys, I cannot tell you how determined I was to not have children. And so one of my most proud moments is actually, it was our 1 year anniversary. You know, we've been together 10 years this year, but we've only been married for 4 years. So it would have been 3 years ago. I'm losing it, you guys. But it would have been on our 1 year anniversary, our marriage anniversary. I decided to surprise him, and I'm not very good at surprises. I'm not very good at gifts or anything like that. I'm always just like, what do you want? I'll get you whatever you want. But I was like, I'm going to make this a surprise. I'm going to surprise him. And what I did was I went to the store. I got a little gift bag and I got a card, and I actually got like some fertility tests. I got some prenatal vitamins. I got some pregnancy tests, and just kind of everything that would say like, I want to have a baby. And I had no idea what it would look like. I didn't even know if I could have children, but I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. Like, this man deserves it. He's been there through thick and thin for me. And I owe it to him, is what I had, convinced myself. Like, I owe it to him to have a child. Like, what kind of terrible person would I be if I like took that away from him? So I was convinced that I was having a baby for him, which is fine. Not knowing that she would be like the biggest life-changing thing that ever happened to me. But what I did is I gifted it to him on our anniversary, and I put a card in there. And it's funny because we still have the card. And it said something super sappy. And I'm normally like a funny kind of card person. I'm, the one that shows like the beer and the dick pics and all that stuff. But this time it was like a romantic card. And I don't even remember what it said. Something about like being the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I wrote in there, handwritten there, let's make a baby. And he like tackled me, and we started crying, and it was like this super happy, proud moment, because I was like, oh God, this is happening. And so it was super scary for me, guys. Like I know for some people they get really excited about that, but I was freaking terrified. So I was proud that I actually like went through with a plan that had to do with somebody else and not just myself. Because I was very selfish when it came to things like that. I was like, nope, not doing it. And so I was very proud that I stepped out of my comfort zone and really, truly wanted to do something for somebody else with the right intentions. So I was very proud of that moment. And then the next moment that I would say that I'm very proud of is when I quit my corporate job. I'm not kidding, you guys. I was so terrified. I had a really good salary. I had really good benefits. I had like the job that people wanted to have. And I was letting it go for a dream, really, a dream. There was no action at the time other than like putting in my notice. But I was very, very proud of that moment. Terrified, scared shitless, but also very proud. And my life has never been the same since. And that's only been a few years ago, but still, like, think of how much can happen in a few short years. Think of like your life. How much can happen in a few short years? Hell, how much can happen in a year, 6 months, a month? So I made the big scary step to, go off and do my own thing, and it has been terrifying, but equally as satisfying. And if you can get past that, that first fear of like the unknown, because it's unknown. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? What type of, there's just all the questions. Like, what are you going to do with your life? And so going through that, I'm very proud that I actually took the step, and I've been committed to the journey ever since. And I ain't going back. I don't know where I got that from, but I feel like it's from a movie. Okay, so then my next question that I got was, how do you tell your story? How do you tell your story? And so what I like to do, or what I like to encourage people to do, if you're wanting to start a business, or if you're just wanting to like share more about yourself, if you're wanting to write a blog, if you're wanting to do a podcast, if you're wanting to, I don't know, whatever you want to do to tell your story. Because a lot of times we like share a story, but it's not like the real story. Sometimes we give a filtered version of ourselves and we're not actually giving our real selves. And so I want to encourage you to actually tell your real story. I don't know if you guys can hear my dogs running around in the back. It's really hard to, I shouldn't say it's really hard. I just record podcast as is. I got one snoring on the floor and two running around like idiots behind me. That's just my life. So how do you tell your story? And what I like to do is create a timeline of your life, right? So from like birth to wherever you are now, and then you write all of the big events that have happened to you. So any obstacles you've ever overcome, any fears, any challenges, any obstacles, any hardships, like all of those things, any successes, all of those things. So, like for me, I mean, not to like recap my whole timeline, but, I was born in Minneapolis, and then I ended up in Iowa, and then I bounced back and forth between schools like 8 frickin' times before I finally graduated from a small town in Iowa. And then I went to one college, and then I went to another college. And then, in between all of that, I got arrested a bunch of times because I did really stupid shit. And then I decided to get my life together. And, I met my husband along the way, had a baby along the way, changed jobs along the way, multiple times. I got fired because of an OWI. Let's see, I've done lots of traveling. I've played roller derby. I've snowboarded. I've surfed. I got married. I had a baby. Like, you just write everything and anything that's ever happened to you. Any awards you've gotten. If like I graduated with a bachelor's degree, 2 bachelor's degrees. Like, I don't talk about like that kind of stuff a lot, I guess. Maybe I should, but any certifications you have, any experiences you've done, any, like I went on retreats last year, and there's just lots of things that you can put on your timeline and then start talking about those things, right? And that's all I do. Like there's certain times where like Christmases, like around Christmas time, I think of all the Christmas stories that come up and how like Christmas can be really freaking hard, but I'm over that because that's not that season right now, and it's January, and I'm freaking stoked for what 2019 has in store. But like, say you want to be a photographer, right? Like, and I'm sure one day you didn't just wake up and you're like, I'm going to be a photographer. Or maybe you do, whatever. You have some sort of story that had inspired you to be a photographer. So I want you to think back on like when the turning point was for you. What made you decide like, hey, I want to give this a shot? You know, so like for me, I really fell in love with coaching a few years ago when I started really diving into like personal development and like these DIY programs and started following like these coaches. You know, I talk a lot about like Mel Robbins and Tony Robbins and all of these people. And I'm like, man, I want to be that person. Which is funny to even like say out loud to you guys, but like that's my goal. Like I want to be like, I want to be out there helping thousands of people, right? Like I see these people and I'm like, I want to do that. Like that's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. And so like, because they had helped change my life, that's how it helped impact me. And so that's what made me invest in programs and going out there and seeing these women and being like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the things that I've overcome. And this is how I'm going to tell my story, right? Everybody has a story. My story is different from your story, different from Susie's story, different from Nancy's story. Everybody's story is different. You just have to start sharing it. A lot of times we get caught up on like, how is this going to sound? Who's going to judge me? What are these people going to say? And you just have to shove all of that BS aside and focus on you and how you got to where you are today. Where did you come from? How did you get here? What did you do? What obstacles did you overcome to get here? What jobs did you do? What schools did you do? What kids did you have? What relationships did you build? What bridges did you burn? Because you and I both know that we've probably burnt some bridges along the way. I've probably burnt more than I care to share, but hey, that's all part of life. We live and we learn, right? So start telling your story. Just start telling it. Start talking about it. Create a timeline, and for each event in your life, there's a story. And that's it. And that's it. And you just keep talking and you don't stop talking. I'm really good at the talking part. My next question that I got on here is, who has been your best teacher? And I am going to say, without a doubt, 1,000,000,000% that experience has been my biggest teacher. I know that's not like a person, but experience has been my biggest teacher. I have failed and failed and failed and failed and failed time and time again. And really every time I failed, it was a learning lesson. I was like, okay, well now I know what not to do. And I would just say that putting myself out there and treating life as an experiment has been my biggest teacher. My whole life experience has been a biggest teacher. Like I've done a lot of really shitty things and I've done a lot of really good things. And I've learned something every single time. You know, I've learned something through relationships. I've learned something through jobs. I've learned things through trial and error. I've learned to be courageous. I've learned to be confident. And while I'm not like 100% on either of those, my goal is to be 100% every day. You know, just show up the best you can today and try to do something to make you 1% better every day. And a lot of times I'm just like super, super scared, super, super nervous, but I still do it anyways. And so maybe experience and fear has been my biggest teacher, because a lot of times fear will show you exactly what you need to work on. So like if you need to have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody, but you don't want to because you're scared, like that's a learning experience right there. That's going to be your biggest teacher, because you're like, oh shit, why am I having this fear? And so really diving deep into that story within you on why you have that fear, and then overcoming it anyways. Like fear and experience has been my absolute biggest teacher. Next question on here is the biggest fears that you used to have. And believe it or not, my biggest fear was fear of failure for a very long time. And I just was like, and a lot of times I did fail a lot, but it was almost like I expected to fail. And I was just like, well, fuck it, I guess I'm just going to fail. And then a lot of times I was always scared of letting others down. Like I was always thinking like, what if I don't amount to what this person thinks I should be? Or what if I let what if I let this person down? Or what if I let that person down? Like, that's probably my biggest fear, is letting people down and not living to my biggest potential. And I still have that fear. Like, a lot of times I set really big goals for myself and I'm like, oh my God, what if I can't do this? Like, and it scares the shit out of me. And I've always been pretty good at follow through. But I've also let a lot of people down too. Like, I don't think that it's, something that my parents or like my family or anything, or hell, even like the jobs that I've got fired from, I'm like, ugh, I feel like I'm just always letting people down by not conforming to what people think I should do. And it's a fear, because I don't know, maybe I'm just talking in circles, but really just like letting people down and not living to my fullest potential. But I have to let go of the letting people down, because you're always going to let somebody down. You can't please everybody. So it's a constant battle within my brain that I just have to show up and do the best I can with what I have. And so that's all I do every day, and just try not to focus on letting people down. That I'm just like staying in my own lane and showing up as my best self and living to my highest potential. So I'm always thinking like 5-10 years in advance, like what does my life look like in 5 years? What does my life look like in 10 years? Who is that person? What steps can I take today to become that person? And my biggest fear is not becoming that person, is letting myself down and not becoming that person. True. Isn't that crazy? Now it's out on the table. You guys, I'm scared that I'm not going to be the person that I want to be. But I just show up with the intent that every day I'm working towards that person. I have this like big picture vision of like who I am with my family and my career, and how I'm impacting the world and those around me. And I'm going to make it happen, but it's still very scary that what if I don't? What if I don't? So hold me accountable. Just make sure that I keep showing up for you guys. And it'll happen. I have no doubt. I just got to keep telling myself baby steps, keep going, keep forward momentum. Not really like with your head down, but like just keep moving forward, like keep trucking along, look at the big picture. And I'm, like my own cheerleader over here, like telling myself, rah, rah, you got this, Sausha. Like, let's do this. Okay. So then my last question is that I'm going to cover today, is what if your story and where you are at doesn't match up? And so what I think this person is referring to is like, what if you've had like a really shitty past or something like that, and like where you're going is not in that direction, and that's perfectly fine. And so I'm just going to speak on that, because I'm making the assumption that this is what the person is talking about. I mean, she wrote quite a bit more, but that's basically the gist of it. And so what I want to say is, you are in control of your story at any given time. And sometimes, with the dark, there is the light, and vice versa. Like, you can't have one without the other. Like, nobody's life is just like picture perfect, where, it's a highlight reel 24/7. And if it is, those people are totally full of shit, and they got a lot of inner work that they need to do. Same with the people who are like in constant darkness, right? Like, those people have a lot of inner work to do to bring out the light. And so I don't even really like the word balance, but I think of the earth and how it turns, and you can't have the light without the dark. Okay. And so learning how to live with both, and how to manage both, how to function with both, how you have, these high times, how you have these low times, and how to manage and function as an adult, as a human, and how to share these things in a positive manner, because you can really talk about the negative things. That they're there. With sadness brings joy. With death brings life. And that's just kind of how it is. And so you are in control of your life, and at any given time you can rewrite your story. So if you've been through some like really, really deep, dark stuff, which I know that, I've been through some shit, but I have by far not been through the deepest of the shit. Like, there's always somebody who has it worse. So I don't like to compare. But you are in control. And so you can rewrite your story right now, today, and use your past to dictate what you want your future to look like. And so a lot of times you can say like, okay, I don't want this, not this, not this, not this, not this. And that's perfect. You may not have an exact, like, I want my life to look like this, but start dreaming about it. Like, what would you want your life to look like? Like what? And for a very long time, I would say, what is the exact opposite that I could do from this? And it would, I'd tell myself, what would a normal person do? What would this person do? What would that person do? And for a long time, that's how I would base my story, because I couldn't get my brain to think outside the box. I'd always just be like, oh, if I just won the lottery, all my problems would be solved. And that's total bullshit. Like, even if you won the lottery right now, chances are you don't even know how to manage that amount of money or what to do with it or what to invest in. A lot of you would be like, I would pay off all my bills and then I would go on these elaborate vacations. But then what do you do when the money runs out, right? So you start, oh gosh, now I'm getting on a tangent. So anyways, if your old story doesn't match up to where you want to go, that is perfectly fine, because my old story does not match up to where I want to go. I'm using that past to rewrite my future, because honestly, I don't want to relive all that really stupid shit that I did when I was younger. I want to live a life I love. I want to show my family how to live a life they love. I want us all to be happy and have adventure and have open conversations and not feel this fear, this guilt, this overwhelm, this stress. I don't want to be on autopilot. I don't want to just wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed. Like I want to live a joyous, happy, adventurous life. And so that day that I decided to rewrite my story, I used what I didn't want to do to help me create what I did want to do. So I hope that makes sense. I could go on and on and on about stories. I really could. But I'm not going to. I'm going to end this here. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today. I absolutely love doing this podcast, and I cannot wait to see what 2019 brings. And I'm going to leave you with this. I have opened enrollment for my next group coaching program. So if you have thought about working with me, now is the time. I want to encourage you to go over to sashadavis.com/apply now and fill out the application. I'll read and reply to each and every one of your applications, and then we'll get on the phone. You'll either get on the phone with me or somebody from my team, and we'll talk about your next steps. Whether that's with me, whether I make some recommendations on where to start, or hell, maybe I'll even recommend another coach where to start. I just really want what's best for you, and I want you to start creating the life you love, whether that's your personal life, your professional life, excelling in your career life. Like, we have something for you, whether it's with me or with somebody else. I want to help you. So I encourage you again to go over to sashadavis.com/apply now. Enrollment is open from now until February 10th. So you got about a month. The sooner you get in, the sooner you can start working with me. It's pretty much just bonus time from now until we actually start. And then I'm thinking about throwing in a couple of fun things. So I don't want to, they're going to be surprises. Let's just say that. I'm going to throw in all the surprises. So I'll let you know what the surprises are after you fill out your application, and we'll go from there. So super excited for 2019, you guys. Stay tuned. There's going to be live events this year. There's going to be retreats. There's going to be all the programs, all the badass, so much fun stuff. And I just want to leave you with this. Go out there, be a badass, create the life you love. All right, ladies, peace out.